he talks about Dordogne is a region where the light mixes with the smell of walnut trees, where excellent food is served by people of great kindness. When you come to Dordogne, you generally don't want to leave. And when I think about the game as a place that I visit and spend time in, I think that's when I enjoy it the most. And when I approach it as like a narrative or something that I'm working through and trying to achieve and understand, like in a objective way, it starts to fall apart.
Welcome to Pixel Therapy, the video game podcast where we look at the games we play through the lens of the player, where what you play is just as important as how you play it, and where emotional intelligence is a critical stat. I'm your co-host, Jamie, pronouns she, her.
And I'm your co-host, Spencer, pronouns they, them.
And this is Pixel Therapy. Let's start this episode, as we always do, with our Patreon shout-outs. This is our special thank you to everyone who subscribed at our Patreon name in the credits tier for the month of June. So it's a very big thank you to Genevieve, Lindsay, Jackie, Pimhatai, Adayenka, Seethy Mess, Ava, and Sammy. Thank you all so much for your support. That crew, man, just rolling through every month.
We heart you.
Y'all are the best. Thank you. Remember, if you want to get your name in the credits, you can hop on over to patreon.com/pixeltherapypod, where you can subscribe for as little as just $2 a month and get access to our monthly bonus series. In our June Patreon bonus episode, we talked about Dredge, Diablo 4, and our favorite Summer Game Fest announcements. So if those sound like things you want to hear us talk about, or even if you're just looking for a little more pixel therapy in your life, check out the Patreon and you can get access to over 20 bonus episodes of the podcast. A lot of good stuff in there. A lot of fun times have been had.
Treasure trove of content.
A real treasure trove. Real treasure trove. If you already subscribe to us on Patreon, or if you're just looking for a way to show your support for free, please consider rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts. Every review on that platform does really matter for a small podcast like us, and we'd really appreciate you taking the time to do that. But know that no matter how you choose to engage with us, we appreciate you being here all the same. So thank you.
Yeah, we do.
We appreciate it. All right, Spencer, it's time to get cozy. Pull up an armchair. Feel free to lie down on the couch. Let's talk about our feelings. Spencer, how you doing? Because it's been a while since you and I chatted, actually, with vacations and travel, and
life has torn us apart.
It has. It's ripped us apart, but it's brought us back together again for this beautiful moment, this lovely podcast. How are you doing today?
I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you, Jamie, like, The Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom still rules everything around me, so not much has gone on.
Hey, that's okay.
I'm attached to my Switch, so I guess I had some life events in the past couple of weeks. It's more like those life events sort of add punctuation to what is mostly me playing The Legend of Zelda. But my partner and I did a little visit down to the ancestral lands of Delaware for a few days, and that was chill. And we're about to go on another trip to visit his ancestral lands of California in a couple weeks from now. So it's been a busy summer. We've been doing some cleaning here and there. My anxiety has decided that all of a sudden the sort of piles of various clothes we need to donate, or furniture we want to get rid of but haven't, or junk we've accumulated, it all needs to go, like, right away, right now. I can't do it. So my partner's been very supportive in, like, helping making that happen, but in a sane way, and not just putting everything in a big pile and torching it, which is what I fantasize about. We're dragging ourselves to the end of the second season of The Bear. It's just a thing because we have a little group watch situation in my household, but one of our housemates is someone who works in the food service industry, and so it's like we work 9 to 5 and he's working 5 to midnight. And so it's like a tiny 2-day window per week where we're all together and can are allowed to watch The Bear. But I think we're gonna close it this weekend. So I'm looking forward to that. God. We have one episode left.
Well, the self-control y'all must be exhibiting is vast, because my partner and I burned through that season in like 3 days before we left for our vacation, because I was like, there's no fucking way I'm going to be on vacation wondering what the hell happened in The Bear.
Yeah.
So yeah, can't wait for you to catch up so we can talk more about it. I really was a big fan of the second season. And
it's so good.
Can't wait for the third, which I'm sure we're getting.
Yeah, it's a tough job, but someone has to do it. Exhibit that kind of restraint. No, but it's been great. I'm just trying to think if anything else of note has happened. I'm strangely into. I'll say this before I say my last thing, and then I absolutely want to hear all about you. But
yes.
We need more of these 30-minute dramas. I am so like into like everything about it feels good. It's just a nice, tight 30-minute, even if it's 28 minutes, even better. Love that. I just feel like there's so much good TV to watch, and a 48-minute episode is just like such a commitment. I'm living for the shorter dramas.
Yeah, that's true. And there's not a moment wasted in The Bear. I feel like it's very, I don't want to spoil anything, but they do have at least one episode this season that goes past the 30-minute mark. And I feel like this has been a thing since shows started streaming, where you can have these more variable runtimes for episodes. And overall, I think this is a positive thing, but it has ended up in like some bloat. I mean, I think like the last season of Ted Lasso, no shade if you're a Ted Lasso fan, like I like the show, but for me, The Bear is like a much better version of Ted Lasso. I think the shows have some interesting parallels. I'll be writing a dissertation on it.
Can't wait.
But I can't help but kind of compare Ted Lasso to The Bear in a lot of ways, and the way that show applied its runtimes and the way it used extended runtimes to just bloat things out and introduce extra characters and I don't know, make the show like stretch. It was stretching what was already there, whereas I feel like when The Bear has a moment where it languishes, or not languishes, but like goes deeper and like spreads its wings a bit and hits a longer runtime, it's using that to deepen what's already there rather than stretching out further from the main characters and the main conceit of the show. So yeah, I don't know. I can't say enough good things about The Bear.
It feels like a special treat when it's a longer episode. Like it's like, it doesn't even feel longer because you're just so riveted the entire time. I absolutely feel that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, my other love currently on TV, which is on the entire opposite end of the spectrum, is for some reason Love Island UK has me in a chokehold.
You really go for these reality romance shows, huh? That's like a thing.
It is not. This has happened to me, and I don't know what it is. It's like the one romance, like it's if I was talking about another romantic reality show, it was probably I guess I did watch Ultimatum Queer Love this year.
I think you talked about that the last time we recorded. I don't remember if it was the bonus or the public.
Oh my god, that show. Oh my god. But Love Island UK, it's definitely like the premise is kind of like a bunch of hot singles are imprisoned in a villa and have no access to technology or even their own phones, and thus have no choice but to talk to each other in an attempt to rapidly couple off and find love. And what is so British about it is that it's like like self-aware of how fucked up it is, and often comments on itself about
interesting,
making jokes about how it's basically like sexy jail. And something about, and the fact that these contestants are all being filmed constantly, like it's constantly like making fun of itself, and there's something about that just makes it so delicious to watch. I can't explain it, but the other great thing about Love Island UK is that a new hour-long episode comes out every single day.
Oh, wow.
So there's just so much. Anyway, I won't bore you or our poor listeners with my inexplicable love for Love Island UK, but please tell me about you. How you been? What's going on?
I've been pretty good. Been traveling. Was off work for about 2 weeks, which was delightful. And took a trip to my ancestral lands of Northwest Ohio.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's that time of year. Traveling around, seeing family. It was a pretty good trip. It was very relaxing. We got to see a lot of people. Got to spend a lot of time with folks. Folks actually had a lot of time to spend. That's not always the case when we're able to go home. Sometimes people are busy with various things. There's folks we can only see once or twice, but it felt like a very balanced visit, and we got to see all the people that we wanted to see for a good amount of time. Never enough time. Obviously, we miss family when we're back on the East Coast, but it was good. It felt like a very rejuvenative trip overall. Still exhausting because we do drive it, and that's a lot. But yeah, it's a good time. Brought the dogs. I continue to be amazed at how complete fucking opposites the two dogs that we have are, which we did completely unintentionally, but they could not be more different. When we go to Ohio, it's a lot of countryside, like running around. There's a lot of people around. There's a lot of family get-togethers. And our older dog, Tess, who is now 9, just turned 9 this month.
Oh my gosh.
Basset Hound Jack Russell mix. She is thriving. She loves it. She loves a party. She's a social butterfly. She's never met a stranger. She runs around the whole time, greeting everyone, getting pets from everyone, begging food off of everyone, convincing strangers to give her sausages.
Oh my God.
And things of that nature. My partner's parents have a beautiful house in the Ohio country, and they have a pond and a few acres, and Tess is in and out of the pond.
Paradise.
They had a big party at their house where there's kids, and Tess escorts people up onto the diving board and watches them, and she's living her best life.
Love that for her.
And is never at our side when we are in Ohio. She is with someone else, running around somewhere else. It's a chore to keep any sort of tabs on her location.
Oh my God.
Because she's just enjoying herself so much, living her life to the fullest. Our younger dog, Booker, who is 2, and is a Hound Mountain Cur mix, could not be further up our assholes.
Oh my God.
This is his nightmare. There are too many people. He can't keep tabs on them all. They are all dangerous. Strangers are dangerous, and we don't trust them.
Yeah.
He will not be dog napped. He is going to be right at our side at any given time. He is afraid to drink the water or eat the food because it is all unfamiliar to him. Every single person gets an alarm bark when he meets them until they sit down. People are different when they're sitting up and standing down. I don't know if you knew this, but you become a completely different person. You could be sitting next to Booker for an hour, and he's quiet and loving and is licking your hands and getting pets, and then you stand up and he's alarm barking at you, and he's a hound, so it's like a woo 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 bark. And it's too much. There's too many people. Until it gets down to 4 or 5 people, he is in fully alert mode and is watching everything that's happening and is terrified of all of it.
Honestly, I get it.
We raised both of these dogs in similar environments and similar ways. They are both adopted, so we did not have them from puppy, but fairly young. And it is just hilarious how much their natures are completely different. And obviously we are doing a lot with Booker to help encourage him to come out of his shell and be more comfortable, but he is just never going to be the dog that Tess is in terms of the I want to run around and beat everyone.
Yeah.
It's not his bag. He likes small private. So he in every location that we went to, he would decide on what his safe space was, and then we would get there and he would immediately run to the safe space. So couches are that's a big safe space for him. So my partner's parents have an outdoor couch sitting on their back porch. As soon as we got to their house, he would run to that couch and sit down on it. That's where he would stay. At my dad's place, he would run to the couch and sit on the couch in the living room, and he would watch everything transpire from there. It's very funny. But since we've gotten home, both dogs have been so tired. Booker has been laying down to eat his meals.
Oh my
It's his
God.
New thing now.
The
New
drama.
Thing, the drama of it. We put the bowl of food in front of him. He looks at it for a while like, is this all I'm getting? Because when we were in Ohio, he got wet food because he refuses to eat otherwise when he's in Ohio. He's too scared to eat, so we give him wet food. It's the only thing that can entice him. It did reach a point where I was spoon feeding him.
Oh my God.
For some meals because he wouldn't eat the food out of the bowl, but he would eat it off a spoon. This dog is ridiculous. Meanwhile, Tess will eat a bowl of food on the side of the highway with semis blowing by at 100 miles an hour and not give a shit. She's like, food? Yes, done. It's gone.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So come back home, and now his new thing is that he eats laying down.
Love that for him.
Yeah, you know what? I Googled it. Google says it's not that weird, and it's just more comfortable for some dogs. So whatever. Our little drama queen now eats his meals laying down, one kibble at a time. It takes him like 20 minutes to eat a bowl of food. Just like, whatever, man. Whatever does it for you.
Look,
He's such a weirdo.
There are two types of people at parties. There are the ones who go and jump into the fray, and then there are those that look for the dog in the kitchen and hang out with them. Booker is the dog equivalent of that second person, and I'm here for it.
No, I mean, I get it. I definitely get it. But it's just so funny. So that's my observations. Obviously, there's lots of fun family stuff, but I'll just talk about my dogs.
Very good.
And what it's been like watching those two dorks run around and enjoy their vacation. But yeah, maybe we should talk about some video games. What do you think about that? You think the listeners want to hear some video game talk, maybe on a video game podcast?
Novel.
Yeah, they might want to. So we do have a topic today. We're going to be talking about Dordogne, which is a game that we both played. But before we get into that, I wanted to share a little bit about a few demos that I checked out.
Hell yeah.
The last week of June was the week of like Steam Next Fest, when there's all these demos that become available on Steam. And some of them like stayed up. So I was traveling during Steam Next Fest, so I wasn't able to check stuff out then at that specific time. But when I came back from traveling, I was able to check a few things out, and I wanted to share with you, Spencer, a few of the games that I think you and I are going to want to keep our eyes on.
Great, love it.
If we're not already. Well, actually, I think two of these you've already heard, but I know you've already heard of them. But anyway, the first one, I don't know if you know about this one. Have you heard of Viewfinder?
No.
Viewfinder is a game coming from Sad Owl Studios that's coming to PlayStation and PC on July 18th. So very soon. Actually, that'll be the day this episode releases.
Nice.
Is when that'll be coming out. So if you're listening to this, go check out Viewfinder. It's a little independent game. It's a puzzle adventure indie game that's got like a first-person perspective. And the whole thing with the game is that you are picking up or taking pictures, and you place that picture in the environment in a way that it then turns into 3D as a part of the environment. And you're using that mechanic to solve puzzles. So there is a demo on PlayStation that you can go download and try, and I believe there's one on PC too, and I would kind of recommend it because experiencing this is really crucial to like understanding how fucking impressive it is. But I'll try to do my best to describe it, which is that like, you know, in the demo, you need to cross between these two ledges, and there's no bridge or anything there. So you pick up a picture of an arch, and you stand to the side of the two ledges, and you hold the picture up so that where the picture is positioned kind of looks like it creates a bridge between the two ledges. And then you press a button to place it, and the picture like pops into a 3D structure based on the perspective that you have placed it in. So it's like size and everything is determined by the way you've positioned it and held it and the perspective that you had when you placed it. And then it creates a real 3D structure that you can then cross. or you can place it in such a way that you walk into the picture. The picture becomes a 3D environment that you walk into. You can turn the pictures. So in one puzzle, it's a picture of a skyscraper, and if I turn it to an angle, I can use the edge of the skyscraper like a ramp to get up to a higher ledge in the real life environment that I'm in. And so the demo starts where you're actually finding pictures that the game has already taken that you are then using to solve the puzzles. But then the demo like moves forward in time to a part later in the game where you actually have your own camera and you are taking pictures.
Oh my God.
Of things that you want to, and then using those shapes to reapply them back into the geography of the game, and use and that when it goes that level, it's fucking mind blowing. Like, I don't even understand how the tech behind this works.
Yeah.
How a game could allow you to take a picture and then turn that picture into a 3D object, like from almost any perspective within the game world, and have that work and be like something you can interact with and create new 3D structures within the game is makes my mind go But it was really cool. It was really cool to experience. I'm not a huge puzzle gamer, but this was really cool. And there seemed to be some interesting, like the narrative threads that it was kind of peppering in were intriguing. Seems like there's going to be a sort of like meta narrative happening where they're talking about art and game design as part of the game.
Very cool.
Unless I was just really misunderstanding what was going on. But this is one to look out for. So I think if you're listening to this on Tuesday, July 18th, go check out Viewfinder because this game seems really fucking cool. The next game that I played a demo for is one, Spencer, that you and I have been excited for a while, which is Goodbye Volcano High.
Yeah!
Which is coming out in August, end of August.
Can't wait.
Also for PlayStation and PC and Mac. I played the demo on PC. And this game is a trailers and stuff have presented it as a kind of visual novel with some adventure game elements, some rhythm game elements, where you play as a teenage dinosaur going to school with other teenage dinosaurs. You're in high school, it's senior year, you're about to graduate, and also an asteroid is approaching the Earth. And so, you know, as we know, as humans, the asteroid hits the Earth and the dinosaurs all die. So it's the impending doom combined with about to graduate high school. And there's visual novel dating sim elements in the game. And also you play as the main character, a young dinosaur Fang, who is trying to get her band to win Battle of the Bands. And so it's teenage angst, all rolled into the kind of impending apocalyptic doom that we all live with day to day.
Can't wait.
And it trailers and stuff made it look like it was going to be really heartfelt. Definitely a game that's up our alley. I played the demo, and I can say that I think that this game is shaping up to be what we expect it to be. The demo did not have any of the rhythm game elements in it, unfortunately, which is kind of an aspect of the game that I'm really curious to try. I mostly just played through some visual novel stuff, but I kind of like the way the game is presenting the story and dialogue. There's a lot of texting in the game, which feels really authentic to the way people communicate nowadays. I liked the main character and the way she was represented. Fang seems cool. I like kind of the drama that they were introducing between her and her friends. And I thought the way the game sets up the choices that you make is interesting. You're given typically 3 dialogue choices to respond to something that's happening, or sometimes it's dialogue and sometimes it's like taking an action, but you're given your choices. And if you're choosing something that might be harder to do, or like there was a moment I was having with my brother and I could choose to like make fun of him or like be more emotionally honest with him. And I chose to be more honest and supportive. And I had to both choose the selection and then hold down extra buttons to confirm the selection because that choice was harder for the character to make. And so I thought that was interesting. There was another moment where you're in conversation with some characters and you're talking about the asteroid, and kind of when the choices first pop up on the thing, one of your options is like, I'm scared, but that quickly goes away. Like if you don't select that right away, it goes away because that's like an immediate feeling that you might have. But that as time passes, you're going to be like, oh, I'm not going to say that because I'm too cool to say that. So they were doing some interesting things with the way you choose the dialogue options that I thought was cool, that are kind of representative of how we might change the way we're thinking about something as a moment passes, or what might be harder to do in a given moment because of our own insecurities and whatnot. So I don't know. I'm pretty excited for this one. It definitely, I hope that people aren't going to come into this expecting it to be too like polished. I know PlayStation has presented it several times now, and I hope that's not setting the game up for unfair expectations, because this is definitely a game made by a small team of people. There are things that don't feel 100% polished. It's got a little bit of rough edges. Now, granted, this was a demo, but just things like kind of strange pauses between moments of dialogue. It was all voice acted, which was impressive, and the voice acting was pretty strong, at least in what I played in the demo, and the writing seemed pretty strong. But like, one of the things I've heard people say about this game is that it's like Deviant Art the game because of the art style.
Yeah.
And like, I think there's going to be aspects of it that are like that. Like it has a hand-drawn art style that's pretty simplistic, and it's made by a small team. So yeah, we'll see if some...
I just think, I was just going to get into this whole conversation of like what not every game needs to be a quote unquote AAA game. And also what is a AAA game? And also different art is so subjective. Okay. I just had to say my piece. Please continue.
I think that's all super valid. I am just I know for me, like I can see myself appreciating this game, even it comes out with these rough edges, and maybe it doesn't feel as polished, or it doesn't feel quote unquote AAA, or it feels like it's made by a smaller team, or it's got some of these things, these imperfections. Like I'm okay with that. I don't need all of my games to be, what was it? We just found out through the FTC trial with Activision, some of those emails came out, and like the budgets of Horizon and Last of Us came out. They were like plus $200 million budgets for these games. Like, I love those games. I'm glad that there's some games that have that level of budget. Not every game needs that, and not every game needs to be at that level. And I'm okay if we're telling an interesting story and we're doing some interesting things with the gameplay mechanics, like that can and should be enough. So
yeah. And honestly, as an aging millennial, the idea of DeviantArt the game is just hitting on so many nostalgic levels that I'm so much more excited for that than like Starfield. Sorry, no offense. Starfield fans.
Which is also me. Like, I also want to play Starfield. I think it's great that we can have this breadth of experiences available.
Totally.
So then the final game that I know you and I are both excited for, that I played a demo of, is Eternights.
Yeah!
This is the one that looks kind of Persona-esque. But it's made by like a very, very small studio, with only one guy actually being like the primary person in the studio, and then a lot of contract support. This is also coming to PlayStation and PC. PlayStation bias here. It's a action game, role-playing game. It looked like it was going to have some dating sim elements. Played a demo of this. I think I'm still excited for Eternights, but the game is definitely a little different than what I thought it was going to be. For one thing, battles in the game it's not turn-based. It's actually hack and slash, which I think I had thought it was going to be more Persona-esque. And the hack and slash gameplay is fine. It was just fine. It was just serviceable. I wasn't like, oh my God, I'm having so much fun with this hack and slash. It's pretty simple, kind of bare bones. You can definitely tell made by one person. Like you're, like one full-time person. Obviously no game is made only by one person. Even games that are made by one person, like there's somebody supporting that one person. Like there's shit that goes into, Anyway, combat was fine. The game is real horny. But like not in a way that I was like, that was uncomfortable. It was just, I guess it surprised me because Persona, while it has like underlying adult-ish elements, I feel like it's not as direct about it. And so like this game, like within the first 5 minutes of the demo, the game starts with like or at least the demo started with you as the main character. Your friend is helping you make a dating profile. So right away you're already talking about like what you're looking for in a partner, and like what you're going to put on this dating profile. It gives you the ability to, your dialogue options can be like way more sarcastic and biting and like kind of shitty than what you might get in Persona. And then there's like like I finish that dialogue and I get to walk around the room and I walk over to my computer and there's a box of tissues sitting right next to it because your character, your main character is a young man, and I click on the box of tissues and it's like I don't have time for that right now. And then like you and your friend are watching TV and there's like a cute young woman who's a musician like on the TV, and your friend's like commenting on how hot she is and how he'd love to date her. And like, I don't know, there's just like sex is like a thing in this game. You guys, like apocalypse is happening and you get put in a bunker, and your friend, the only thing he brings is a bunch of his grandfather's old porno magazines. Like, he's like, I got the essentials, and it's just like porno magazines.
All right then.
But it was all, I don't know, I was like laughing. It was like, you're kind of, you as the main character are kind of like making fun of how like horny your friend is. And I don't know, it felt very tongue in cheek. So far didn't feel like overly objectifying. Like when you actually start interacting with like the female characters, they seem to be well realized and they have their own like concerns that are not about dating you. And I know that the dating elements are going to be a big part of the game. So it makes sense that it's, I don't know, got this angle in it. The main complaint that I would have is that the game feels pretty empty. Like, aside from the characters that you're actually interacting with, there's really not a lot of NPCs wandering around. It's, I don't know, it's got kind of a weird vibe, but there's weird shit going on too. So I wonder how much the story is going to explain why the game looks the way that it does. But the art style is so cool. Like, it's crisper than even the Persona games are when you're actually walking around in the world. The animation is like, it looks like you're walking around in an anime and is like really well realized. So I'm intrigued by this. I think it's only going to be a $30 game. If this comes out and it's like, oh, this is like 20 hours to play or less, I think I'm going to be really in. If this comes out and it's like, oh, it's a 100-hour game and you have got to grind your way through all this shit with the hack and slash stuff, I'm probably going to be less interested. But if this is more story focused and keeps that sense of humor and isn't too ridiculously long to play, I think this could be a good time.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, my initial reaction is like, well, first it's like, LOL, can't I have to see this? But also like, you know, we live in a world where we try to pretend that teens aren't thinking about sex 90% of the time, and also tries to shame them or pretend as though, you know, that kind of thing is going to lead to ruin or punishment of some kind. And so like, I'm sort of like hopefully optimistic about a game that, you know, centers that in a way that's like validating and maybe affirming, and not just living in a world where that's all innuendo. Because like when I was a teenager, that was like most of my day was preoccupied with like thinking about that. So I don't know, I'm sort of like cautiously hopeful that it's sort of a refreshing take on the high school experience. I don't know. Yeah. I was just really surprised. I think only probably surprised because how much the game evokes Persona and how tonally, like where it's taking like tonally different steps away from Persona towards more something that feels a bit more realistic. Persona has I don't know, it's a skewed take on reality that's almost hyper real, or characters are like too wholesome sometimes in Persona, or at least in the modern Persona, right? Like I think that was something we appreciated about 3 was that characters felt more flawed and like there was more room for messiness. And yeah, I appreciated the humor that the game is injecting into that too, which the Persona series definitely has humor, but yeah, I don't know, this felt different. Cool.
So I'm intrigued. All right. Those are the three demos that I tried that I wanted to talk with you about. I tried a few other demos. I tried like Liza P and stuff. It's not going to be for me. I'm not going to play the Timothy Chalamet simulator. It looks great, but I'll watch some other people play that. It's hard. It's Bloodborne, basically, and it's challenging.
What is it? You're like Pinocchio in that game.
I don't know know if you are that game, like the world of that game just seems so fascinating. I don't know if you are Pinocchio or not. The main character, the reason I say it's Timothée Chalamet simulator, like the main character looks like Timothée Chalamet, like 100%. The world that you wake up in, Geppetto is some sort of powerful figure.
Uh-oh.
And he has invented all of these puppets, and the puppets are robots. They're not made of wood or whatever. It's these robotic creations, and they have gone evil, basically. And I don't really know much more than that because it's kind of very similar to traditional Soulsborne storytelling, where you're going to kind of get lore through items in the world and kind of piece things together as you go along. So really interesting world and world building. That game's coming out this fall, third-person action game. But yeah, just that typical kind of Souls-based combat where you die, you get knocked back pretty far, you lose your experience, you have to go back to where you died to pick your experience back up. Enemies hit really fucking hard and have established patterns. You have to really pay attention to the patterns. There's a parry mechanic in the game that I couldn't quite get to work correctly. But yeah, the world looked really cool. Cool.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I don't know, there's something about this sort of like dark fantasy genre. Like I'm thinking of Lies of P. I'm thinking of that game Lost in Random that came out last year. That was I think it was sort of like Alice in Wonderland-esque.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's something about it that just, maybe because it feels like I'm retreading ground that I've already seen 100 times. And I know it's like a twist because now it's like dark and there's like Souls-like elements or there's some combat or whatever. So it's like adult now. Like I'm just like, not to just totally throw shade on all these games, but yeah, I don't know. I feel that I don't know if it's going to be hitting for me either, but
yeah, it always strikes me a bit as like Tim Burton-esque.
Yeah, it always comes out Tim Burton-esque, doesn't it?
But it's like modern Tim Burton-esque, not like cool Edward Scissorhands. I don't know. It's like there was something that was more quaint about classic Tim Burton that's become more trite as it's like been done over and over again. So I kind of get what you're saying. I thought playing the demo of Lies of P, I thought the vibes were pretty good actually. Like I thought it worked. The dark fantasy elements worked and it was cool, and the enemies were kind of creepy and weird. But yeah, I mean, it's not a style that I'm particularly drawn to.
Yeah, I want to see like some kind of surreal, satirical, almost like Heathers-esque vibe in a video game. Like really just psychologically horrify it for me, and then I'm in.
Yeah, that would be cool. All right, I think we should transition over now to talk about our main topic of the show. Which is the game Dordogne. Am I saying that right?
I think so. You're pronouncing it better than me, for sure. I think that's the closest we're going to get.
This game is French. I'm just going to pre-apologize for any mispronunciations that you might hear come out of my mouth as we talk about this game. We've made good efforts to try to pronounce things correctly, I promise. And yeah, I never took French in school. I'm not a native French speaker at all. So I apologize.
Typical
American. I'm very sorry. We're going to do our best. Be mad at us if you need to. We get it. It's okay. So yeah, we played Dordogne, which is the name of a river in France, and the name of the game that we played, which is developed by Quoi studio, as well as Umanimation studio, and published by Focus Interactive. And the game, it's an adventure video game. It came out within the last month in June of 2023. It's available on PC, on Xbox, and on PS5. I personally played it on Xbox through Game Pass, best deal in gaming, TM. The basic gist of the game is that players are immersed in a unique narrative experience where they explore the vibrant summer colors of Dordogne as they revisit a young woman's childhood to uncover lost family secrets. It's a pretty short game, pretty straightforward game, very film-like, which I think we'll talk about more here as we go. But before we get too deep into it, Spencer, what did you think of Dordogne?
Yeah, I mean, there's something really nice about a game that you can play in under 3 hours. It just felt like a little palate cleanser, I guess. And I think we'll get into more detail about it, but I think what stands out to me the most is the striking visuals of this game. They've sort of managed to combine this hand created watercolor scenes and applied them as textures on 3D objects. And so you get this really dynamic, while still feeling like earthy and rustic kind of style, that feels very much like flipping through someone's sketchbook or even walking through a museum. Like it's incredibly immersive and beautiful, and just really rich feast for the eyes. And so I really, really enjoyed that. It's kind of funny how I feel like games sort of come out in batches over time that feel connected by themes. And I guess what I'm saying is like, Season, Letters from the Future, that came out earlier this year, and it was a game based on like exploration, and you're filling these like a scrapbook essentially with photos and notes and voice memos. And I feel like these two games were probably being developed along the same timelines and wouldn't necessarily, it's not like Season came out 2 years ago and then directly influenced this game. But the mechanics are very similar of like, you're exploring sections of a map, you're taking pictures, you're recording audio, you're finding memories, and then you're populating your own little diary / sketchbook with those things. It felt very reminiscent of Season, even though they are coming out around the same time. And I feel like this has happened before. I can think of past games where it feels like they came out and somehow they are like unconsciously, like multiple people across the world had the same kind of idea for a game, and they just came. I don't know. It's just interesting how things happen.
Yeah.
So it kind of is reminiscent of that. It's like very cozy, casual sort of collecting and memorializing kind of game. So I'd say overall, I'm glad I played it for the sort of diversity of experiences that I look to get out of games. I think you and I both had some thoughts and ponderings about some of the narrative choices that were made. But overall, I do think it's really cool to have a game that toes the line between interactive media and film. And kind of this growing genre of like I'm seeing more and more games, for example, that have traditional stage or TV or film actors be in games that are a lot more like almost reminiscent of watching a film and interacting in the sense of unlocking more narrative. But it's not traditionally what you'd think about as a like classic video game. And I just sort of like seeing more of that. So that's my opening thoughts on Dordogne. What did you think of it?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you said. I think for me, the real draw and I think standout and I think a reason to recommend folks play this game is the art style, which you already named. The watercolor art style and the way that is employed throughout the game is absolutely gorgeous. This game has a very unique look to it. And I think that is one of its strongest aspects is the way it looks and how beautiful it is to play through it. I think I am maybe a little bit more negative overall on it than you are. It was only, 3-ish to 4-ish hours, which was an enticing thing for me going into it, coming back from vacation, being kind of tired and trying to get something, ingest a game and be able to think about it and reflect on it in time for the podcast recording. Like it played into our decision to play this game, which we wanted to play anyway, but selecting this game for our next episode, that definitely had an impact. And I like when games can be shorter like that and give you more of a bite-sized experience, something you can go through in an afternoon. I think that's cool. But ultimately, I think for this game, it ended up resulting in it being a pretty shallow experience, particularly when it comes to the narrative. And so I kind of left the game feeling like, why? I mean, I think of other short games that I've played, something like Before Your Eyes, hour and a half experience, like changed my life. That's hyperbolic, but like it is a game that I still think about sometimes and that left a lasting mark on me and was an absolutely beautiful experience, left me sobbing. That's not Dordogne. I think the strong suits of Dordogne are the art style. It's got really good sound design. The music it's got a quaintness to it that is fun for an afternoon, but it's not a game that I think says anything particularly interesting or lasting. I think I may have enjoyed the game a bit more if I'd played it on PlayStation. I played this on Game Pass so that I could get it for free. That was a consideration for me. And I think I'm probably glad that I didn't spend money on it. But if I'd played it on PlayStation, I may have been enticed to. There's a lot of collectathon elements to the game. There's a lot of different things that you can collect to populate your journal with. If I played on PlayStation where I could get the trophies, that may have been enough to get me to go back through the game and kind of 100% it, and may have left me feeling a bit different about it. But I also think if the only reason I'm playing the game is to get the trophy, it probably says something about the game and how it resonated for me. So I think overall, when you consider how many amazing games are out, particularly this year, but just in general, how many amazing games are in Game Pass, I kind of come down being like, if this really looks interesting to you and you want a quiet afternoon playing something pretty, go for it. But at the end of the day, this isn't going to rank very high on my list of games this year. And I was a little disappointed overall with the experience. I had hoped for more.
Yeah. I think that all resonates. And it made me think of, I think initially I closed the game and I was kind of like, what just happened?
Which some of that is the narrative, just kind of, I don't know. There's a mystery set up early in the game that I don't think they pay off in an interesting or cathartic way.
Yeah.
And so some of it, the what the fuck factor is the like, what the fuck just happened? But yes, and I came away with it thinking to myself, like, this game is so French. Like, something about this is something about, like, I felt the same way that I felt after watching some like French films. And so I did a little bit of, and I'll get into more about what I mean by that in a second, but I was sort of doing a bit of reading about the game, because first thing I do sometimes is Google like game ending explanation just to see what other people are saying. It's like, am I alone here? Or exactly. Is there something wrong?
Exactly. And I came across this kind of funny interview that was conducted with the game creators and CNC, which is a French film organization. And in the interview, and again, I guess this falls under Jamie's blanket apology for the pronunciation of things. But at one point, Aymeric Castaigne is my guess at the pronunciation of their name, who is the founder and CEO of Umanimation, who was one of the collaborators on this game, says about it that Dordogne has generated a lot of interest in Asia in particular, as it is perceived as typically French. So I was like, okay, great. I'm not the only one. And he goes on to say, it represents an almost epinal image of the French artist in video game form. And what does that mean? Basically, I Googled epinal is like this idyllic kind of French countryside village. And so when people think of like the rolling hills and the lavender and the, old homes, that kind of romanticized image of France is what this game tries to evoke. And they go on to say, I think that foreigners recognize Dordogne as the embodiment of local craftsmanship. Sometimes we joke that we're making the Amelie of video games. Amelie being that movie we always see the card movie for on Netflix. And Cedric Babouche, who is the art director and actually was responsible for doing all of the watercolor imagery that we see in the game, also adds to that. that, quote, apart from Assassin's Creed, video games depicting the French territory are quite rare. To echo what Imeric was saying, abroad, people don't necessarily like the French, but they like France. He laughs. There's an admiration for our culture and our country. The Dordogne is the third most visited region in France, and it's a well-known and inspiring place. And so they wanted to show that kind of unique side of France. So I think on the one hand, I was like, okay, so what I'm feeling is sort of intentional and also maybe shared from some other folks. And because this game was so cinematic, I also just did a little reading about like French cinematic history because I often forget that, culturally, France is regarded as the birthplace of what we consider to be modern cinema. Particularly in the 60s, there was this movement called globally as the French New Wave movement that kind of defined a lot of later into today methods of filmmaking and sort of moved what we considered like in the past, before that, the 60s, people sort of credited actors with being the ones who carried movies and defined the stories that were being told. And the New Wave movement kind of put more of an emphasis on directors and the stories that they were trying to tell, and sort of started this practice of like exalting certain directors and going to see their movies because of a certain style that they were bringing to it and blah, blah, blah. But one of the other things is that a lot of the main themes that came out of the French New Wave movement and continue into a lot of movies we see today was a lot of stuff around like breaking the boundaries of realism, having really ambiguous, fragmented narratives that are maybe like jumping between the past and the future, and focusing a lot more on like the drama between characters and exploring like family dynamics and deviating away from like happy or conclusive endings and kind of being more like dramatic character studies. So I thought that was interesting because I think when I looked at the game through that lens, I feel like I maybe got a little bit more of what they were going for, but that doesn't change the fact that I wasn't satisfied with the narrative. And I don't think it changes the fact that I have like the issues that we have with the choices that were made. But if I look at it as sort of a like example of typically French storytelling, I'm like, okay, I can kind of see some of what they may have been going for here. So,
yeah, I mean, I think that context is super helpful and can kind of like recolors a bit of what I think about the game too. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's like I have seen some French New Wave films, having gone to film school, and we watched some of these. And they didn't like, I felt more affinity for that style of filmmaking than I did for the style of game making. And I wonder if I'm trying to put my finger on what it is that kind of breaks some of that in the game, because I just, my big complaint when it comes to the narrative of the game is that it felt like it lacked depth to me. It introduces a lot of elements, which you're kind of naming this sort of fragmented, discontinuous way of storytelling. Introduces a lot of elements, but we don't sit with any of those for an extended period of time. And I feel like that extends even to the gameplay mechanics. The game is unlike Season, where you're in full control of your character moving through an open space. In this game, because everything is done in the watercolor style, it's a watercolor painted scene that you can then move your character around sort of a set path, but your movement is super limited. Your interaction with other objects is super limited. You don't have just open free range on the map. It's all kind of done in a mostly 2D perspective, with certain moments where things are allowed to become more three-dimensional, but it's mostly pretty 2D. You get these like I saw an article that called them interactive vignettes, which I think is a good way to explain it. But you'll engage in a scene or a moment where you have the ability to directly interact with items or objects, whether that's spinning them around, opening them. Maybe you're making a meal, and so the game has you like pick up the spoon with the like right joystick and move that over to the pan, and then with the left joystick move the pan, and those can be some of the most engaging moments of the game, but it intermixes those moments, which happen quite infrequently, with things like just move around this 2D picture and find words that will appear if you go down a certain path that won't have much to do with the storytelling moment that's happening right now, or like run around this 2D landscape and see if you can find the one spot where you can stop and take pictures. And stuff like that. And so it's kind of throwing all these, or find a letter in this room that you have to like stand in a very specific place for the letter to blink, and then you'll be able to notice that it's something you can pick up and interact with. And there's tapes that you can find too. I kind of reference this collectathon aspect. You are collecting words that can be converted into lines of poetry in your book that kind of appear somewhat randomly and unrelated to what's happening in the scene. You are collecting letters which fill in the narrative of the story and like add depth to that. You're collecting stickers, not really explained at all why the stickers are scattered around everywhere. And again, they don't have, I mean, they might, like you might pick up a sticker that's a bird because you're standing near a bush. Will that bird ever be talked about in the game? Will characters ever reference even seeing a bird? Will you even see a bird on the screen? No, but you pick up a sticker of a bird. And then you can actually take photos. But again, that can only happen in very specific places on the map. And it gives you a set of, I think you can take like 9 or 10 photos per chapter. And I rarely had more than one because I was only finding like one spot you could even take a picture from. And you're taking a picture of a very beautiful, but like 2D landscape that you can take pictures of. And so you're going around and collecting all of those things and trying to put them in your journal. But it's I don't know, it just, the game is like throwing too much at you and none of it is very deep, and so none of it gets a chance to really let you sit with it or have an experience with it that feels anything more than surface level.
Like I think the stickers especially would have been a bit more impactful if like when you picked up that sticker, you got a snippet of like background on something relating to the family or the character, like learned a little bit more about them. But to your point, it just sort of turns into, you know, you open your like adventure log, which is like in your journal, and it shows you that there are 6 stickers to collect on this level. And so instead of like really getting deeper into the setting and story, you end up just running around waiting for an indicator to light up that you can collect a sticker. And at the end of the day, it's just, maybe that's what you mean, like getting to that, back to that collectathon aspect. It's just like trying to check off items on a list instead of getting deeper in relationship with the world of the game.
I would say the two things they have you collect, I forgot to mention the tapes. You can go around and find audio tapes, which within the narrative of the game, apparently some of the tapes have recordings of you, the child, and your grandmother, which makes sense. Kids get a recorder and they record things. But there's also tapes that the grandparents recorded together themselves, which makes slightly less sense. Like they're just kind of going around recording random moments. It's kind of set up as, you know, your grandma's kind of artsy, and so she's done this and taken these random recordings. The tapes that you can find, which have like really actually quite well voice acted moments of dialogue between characters played out in them, and the letters that you find were definitely the most interesting and the only collectibles that I really gave a shit about finding, because to your point, they add they color in some things between the characters. Like, for one thing, it's the only way you learn about the grandfather character, who is dead before the game begins. It also lets you learn more about the grandmother character, that you're a little girl staying with her grandmother in the French countryside, and it's the only way you kind of learn about her and what her life is like outside of this moment that you're experiencing with her. And then filling in other details about the world and the family dynamics with your father, who doesn't, who in the, like, did we actually say what the premise?
we said we were helping a young woman uncover lost family secrets, but yeah, I guess we could say a bit more about a little more framework around the story.
Yeah, so the game starts. Your character's name is Mimi. She's in her early 30s, and she is going to her grandmother's house. Her grandmother has passed away. She's going to the house to help clean it out and to try and learn a little bit more about her grandmother, who she hasn't seen since she was 13 years old. And she actually can't remember very much about her relationship with her grandmother. She just knows that when she was 13, her dad decided that they were going to cut ties with the grandmother. It's the dad's mother, and not have anything more to do with her. Mm-hmm. And so then you play as both Mimi in her 30s and Mimi as a 13-year-old child, as she in her 30s moves through the empty house and starts to uncover things that are then triggering memories, which bring you back into 13-year-old Mimi, where you'll play through the memory as her and this kind of final summer that she spent with her grandmother before the dad cut ties with the grandmother. Mm-hmm. That's the premise. So yeah, the letters and the tapes are kind of filling in more information about the grandparents and the relationship that the father had with them.
And one thing I'll add to that, just sort of delayed scene setting, is another quote from Cedric Babouche, who is the artistic director of the game. He said that his objective in sort of telling this story was, in his words, to treat a simple story without antagonism, to reflect on the common memories that we all have, regardless of our origin or gender, to question ourselves about our family, which we never really know. My idea was also to question our memories. Are they really as wonderful or as dark as we imagined? Going from these ideas, he talks about how watercolor seemed to perfectly complement the narrative direction, and he aimed to create a feeling of being enveloped in the atmosphere, to feel the thickness of the air and the smell of nature. So just a bit of kind of what the game was trying to evoke. But I think especially for us, these questions of our memories, especially as children, can we really trust what we remember? And also, who really knows their families, especially through the eyes of a child? Maybe adults are messier or have more going on than we think. And do.
Yeah. And I think that's one area that the game and the narrative mostly succeeds in. The grandmother is presented as a messy character. She has flaws. And my critique when it comes to that regard is I just kind of wanted more. I wanted to understand a little bit more about what had created the bad dynamic between the father and the grandmother. In present day, Mimi, 30-year-old Mimi, she's getting texts from her father, basically telling her, leave the house alone. You don't need to mess with this. You should come back home. I don't want you there. I don't want you to judge me for why I cut ties with your grandmother. I want you to leave this whole thing in the past. And I think that's interesting. I think there are family dynamics like that because that kind of shit does happen. People get mad about sometimes even really small, trivial shit and then just don't talk to each other for fucking 20 years.
Yeah.
These things happen. And I think that was an interesting thing to explore and set up. I just don't know that it pays off in a way that I didn't leave the game feeling like I understood anything more about these characters or I could appreciate them despite their flaws.
Yeah.
And for me, I kind of, I don't know. It just didn't quite work.
Bro, the way it sets things up so mysteriously, especially with the dad texting you in the opening scene of the game, don't go in there. And the you as Mimi being for some reason, I can't remember anything about my grandmother. I was fully buckled in for there is some kind of serial killer murder conspiracy going on here. And she's got a trauma block and she can't remember anything. And the dad doesn't want her to go in the house because it's full of skeletons, real and figurative. I was fully ready for some kind of mind-blowing psychological horror. And so I think when the ultimate conclusion does come to pass, it's a little bit oh.
Yeah, which I don't know. I have issues with the way the game, I feel like they could have done it for the direction that that Cedric Babouche has like said that they wanted to go in and all these things. Like, it's almost like you could have just done less. It's almost like they made it too dramatic to try to give it this bigger feeling, when what they were actually trying to tell was a pretty small, in terms of like impact beyond this family story. And it could have just been, it could have felt more contained and personal, instead of things kind of getting like too like overly bombastic and dramatic. You know, like, I'm someone who loves the movie Boyhood, which I think is like a very good example of something that's just like super observational about how kids interact with the world. You can be that simple and be really impactful. This game kind of wanted to have it both ways at times, and so it just ended up not really working for me. Anyway, though, I feel like I'm being too negative on the game. I want to kind of scale back a little bit and talk about some of the things that I did enjoy about the game. As I mentioned already, the artwork, I think for me, there's a huge fucking selling point for this game. And I think it's important to stress, like, we say it's watercolor. It is actual watercolor. Cedric Babouche has said in interviews that he actually did hand paint almost everything in the game. They would then bring those paintings into Photoshop, and they would do some tweaking with them in Photoshop and Blender to add some third dimensionality to them as needed, or to make some dynamic lighting. But the vast majority of the game is hand painted and like is what was painted. These are not images that were created in an animation software by and large. And he's has like kind of an interesting reasoning for what he likes about watercolor and how he does watercolor painting that I thought was cool. He was talking in an interview with GameDeveloper.com and said that he likes the spontaneity of watercolor because things can't be undone. And even in the sketching process, he uses Indian inks rather than a pencil because he doesn't want to give himself the ability to erase. Even when he's sketching. So he says that I go straight to the watercolor artwork I have in mind. If I make mistakes, it's okay. I deal with them. I never start again. The final result might be a little bit different from what I had in mind, but it doesn't mean that it's not interesting. I don't know. That's a unique way to tackle something like this. I think especially so much of game development is focused on perfection and really hewing in on the tiny little details. And here's someone who's making games from this really different lens of like, I'm going to start and see what I end up with, and then I'm not going to change it. I'm going to keep working with where I've gone from. I wonder how much of that sentiment like poured into the way he like wrote the story and other things where it's like, maybe you should have gone back for a second draft, but but yeah, I don't know. I think it's a cool idea, and it definitely the watercolor art of the game is absolutely a standout and just gives the game such an interesting style. I particularly love the way that the river looks. There's a few scenes where you're kayaking on the river, and the watercolor water and the way they made the reflections through there, which I'm sure some of that was done with animation as well. It's one of the prettiest fucking things that I've seen in a game in a long time. And so I think if you have the few hours to spare, I think the game is worth playing just for the artwork alone.
Yeah, like honestly, to what you're saying, I think for me, one of the things I'm most impressed with coming out of this game is Cedric himself and learning a bit more about the process he took and what he was trying to communicate with this. Like, as an artist and as someone with a background in animating films and creating films as a traditional director, I am interested to see more from him. Like, I kind of, the way he talks about the game, there's a quote from him in an interview with The Verge, and he talks about his inspiration for the game and influences from directors like Hayao Miyazaki, Terrence Malick, various photographers and artists like Edward Hopper. And he says each of these artists has an enormous capacity to render poetry through light, framing, and narration. In a picture, we are able to feel what they mean. And that's what I want to achieve with Dordogne, a game that can be identified at first glance. And to your point about his approach to just going for it and not maybe stopping to rewrite or revise, I feel like I understand the game a bit more when I approach it through like he was trying to create an impression and a feeling and a capturing, you know, he talks about Dordogne is a region where the light mixes with the smell of walnut trees, where excellent food is served by people of great kindness. When you come to Dordogne, you generally don't want to leave. And when I think about the game as a place that I visit and spend time in, I think that's when I enjoy it the most. And when I approach it as like a narrative or something that I'm working through and trying to achieve and understand like in a objective way or like be able to get like a, you know, certified understanding of the message and walk away with that at the ending, it starts to fall apart. And so, you know, I think what you're saying is really sort of showing me what I can appreciate about this game, which is that really artistic impression making that I do think he did achieve with this, because it is beautiful and it absolutely is worth spending 3 hours in just for that. Yeah. No, I think that's a really nice take that you have on it, and I agree that like in reading more about the game and more about Cedric Babouche and the what they were trying to do with it, I do think that's where I've been able to find more appreciation for the game. It's a game that I was looking forward to for a long time. So when I played through it and it didn't have the emotional impact that I tend to look for in games, it was pretty disappointing to me. But I don't want to sound like I think the game is not worthwhile or anything like that. I think there's a lot here that's impressive. It seemed like the first game that Cedric has made, or the first game that they've completed. The Je ne sais quoi looks like they were working on another game, but I'm not sure if it's come out or if it's going to come out. It kind of looks like maybe that game sort of morphed into Dordogne. So I don't know. I'm intrigued to see what they might do in the future. And I think there's a lot of elements here that with some more growth and time, like, and maybe a more compelling narrative than what I think this had, could really pull something together that's really impactful. And it's certainly unique in the gaming landscape, at least from stuff that I've played. So I think especially if you have Game Pass and you have an afternoon where you just want to have kind of a casual experience, I think check out Dordogne. I don't know if I would fully be like, you know, go run out and buy it. But I think especially if you have Game Pass, this is well worth a few hours to have a pretty and kind of quaint experience in the French countryside. Yeah. So that is all for us today. Time's up for today's session of Pixel Therapy. Thank you for tuning in, and we hope that listening to our thoughts and feelings gave you some thoughts and feelings of your own. If you want more Pixel Therapy, come check us out at patreon.com/pixeltherapypod, where you can snag that monthly bonus episode for just $2 a month, plus get opportunities to get involved with the community and influence the show directly. If you're not up for contributing monetarily, but you enjoyed this episode, you can show your support for free by rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts and following us on Twitter and Instagram at Pixel Therapy Pod. That stuff is just as important, and we appreciate it just as much. And you can keep up with all of this stuff and more by visiting our website at pixeltherapypod.com. Finally, since we like to put our money and our energy where our mouth is, we end every episode with a recommended side quest. This week, I am talking to you all about Collectif Intersexe Activiste. It's the only association by and for intersex people in France. And intersex refers to the social status of people who are born with primary and or secondary sex characteristics that are considered to fall outside of typical social and medical definitions of feminine and masculine. You can learn more about the CIAOII's campaigns to raise awareness and education about the lived experiences of intersex people. You can access their rich resource library, and you can donate to their ongoing community efforts at the link in our show description, and that is cia-oiifrance.org.
Thank you for that side quest, Spencer. That is our show for today. So go forth, run a story mission, level up some stats, and don't forget to hug an NPC every now and then. We'll be back soon And by soon, I mean in 4 weeks. We are taking a 4-week pause between episodes to support more summer travel and vacation stuff. But we'll be back in 4 weeks, which is still quite soon, even though it's not 3 weeks, with some more Pixel
Therapy.
Bye.